Good afternoon, welcome back. Today we're sitting down and we're discussing the Pope's very influential speech to the Houses of Parliament in his recent visit to London. He spoke there not just to Catholics, but he speaks to the whole of British society, and in a real sense he preached to the whole world on this whole area of politics and the church, faith and reason, society and religion. So Brother Damien Pius, tell us generally what the Holy Father said.
Yeah, well, in this quite short talk, the Pope managed to squeeze in a lot of information on a lot of major topics, beginning talking about Thomas More and the place and the role of conscience. He moved on to talk a bit about ethics and talked, quoting a line from Caritatis Veritate, he talked about how every economic decision has a moral consequence. He went on then to talk about the place of faith and reason and how the two of them are very dependent on each other, and the role that religion has to play in the political process, how faith and reason need each other, and there should be an ongoing dialogue between the two. He also spoke about, in relation to the place of conscience, he spoke about Christian organisations being able to operate within society according to Christian principles, and I thought that was very interesting. Considering the issues that there have been, particularly in the UK, with the Catholic adoption agencies and some of them not being able to operate because they can't operate according to their principles. Pope was talking about his increasing concern for the marginalisation of religion, and that people, particularly politicians, mightn't be able to vote according to their consciences. So he's talking about freedom of religion, freedom to practice the faith within any context, particularly the political context, being very important.
Yeah, I think even his presence in Westminster Hall, and he mentions that in his speech, that religion should have an influence in the great debate. He's not saying it should have the only, or a dogmatic, or an overarching, but he was definitely making the role. So Brother Luke, what is the role of religion in politics, if it's not to be simply telling politicians what to do? How is it to help them?
Well, I mean, the Pope warns here that if the moral principles underpinning the democratic process are themselves determined by nothing more solid than social consensus, then the fragility of the process becomes all too evident. So politics cannot just be built on consensus, on whatever everybody thinks. It has to be built on something more fundamental. And the role of religion is, in a way, to have corrective aspects in politics, to keep it in a way on a straight line.
But not just corrective, but also illuminative, you suppose. Yeah, you know, because I think so many people tend to see religion and politics as just sort of headmasters, and you can't do this.
I think the Pope alludes to that there has maybe been a bit too much fundamentalism in the past, and that reason was not given enough, maybe enough precedence in faith, or that there was a debate between faith and reason was undermined a bit, and that it is important that we use both. Yeah.
I think he's very good in that when he says, remember Dennis, when he does say that religion needs reason to make sure that it doesn't become fundamentalist or sectarian, and that reason needs religion. So that has a very important role then, doesn't it, for us in society?
Oh, absolutely. I think it gives a depth to both. In fact, I think faith gives a depth to reason, and reason gives a depth to faith. I think they can both, if you like, be mutually supplementary, but also mutually critical of each other. Reason saves us from the tyranny of fundamentalism, and faith gives reason a transcendent aspect. So I think in the political sphere this is very important, that our faith, when laws are being drawn up by a legislator, keeps in mind that humans aren't simply means to an end, that there is a transcendent nature to humanity and to the spirit of man.
Yeah, because the Pope does mention that there, doesn't he? He talks about the concern, he talks about British democracy, how well it goes hand in hand with the Christian understanding of the person made in the image and likeness of God. And it's this theology doesn't undermine the democratic process, but in actual fact supports
And
it.
I think we have, it's part of European history that over the last 2,000 years, I mean, has been the Christian ethics that have underpinned society, and that has brought it to where it is now. Might not always have been 100% perfect, but I mean, it has been, society is what it is because of the underpinning of.
And I think that's, you're very right. I mean, without this Judeo-Christian, Greco-Christian, Judeo-Christian background, Europe wouldn't be what it is today. And I think that this is a constant call for the Pope that we shouldn't be seeing religion as a threat to our European heritage, but in actual fact, the very underpinning of it. James, how would you see religion? I mean, what's the, how do I put it, the threat to religion in our modern democracy?
Well, maybe I'll quote a line from what the Pope said. There are worrying signs of a failure to appreciate not only the rights of believers, the freedom of conscience, the freedom of religion, but also the legitimate role of religion in the public square. And I think you could argue the case that in Ireland is an example of a country which at the moment is not allowing sufficient room for religious values in the public square. If you would have to search quite hard, you know, in public life to find people who really are looking to faith and reason in political life, and of course there are some very strident voices who would wish to almost eradicate, you know, the influence of faith in Irish society. So
I suppose some people might say that might be a reaction to the old days when they felt that religion had an over influence in Irish society, and now almost the reaction is to make sure that religion has no role at all in society. But I think the Pope is making a play that neither of those reactions are the correct role for religion in modern secular society. Now, Brother Morris, you're political to your backbone. How do you, when you listen to the Pope talking like this about the role which religion should play in society, but more almost as a tutor to some extent, rather than as an active player, because the Pope says at one stage, he says quite radically that the corrective role of religion vis-a-vis reason is not always welcomed, though partly because distorted forms of religion such as sectarianism and fundamentalism can be seen to create serious social problems. So he's saying that religion has a role, but what sort of a role has it for you now?
Well, I think there's no ambiguity between what the law should be and what the church is the custodian of. I mean, there is a moral order, moral law there, and with issues that are relevant to today's society, from the life issues to the end of life issues, etc., and everything in between, is that the church does have a lot to say, but again, everything that the church says is reasonable.
Yeah.
So.
And they have to presume, the church has to be willing to enter into the public debate with her positions and why they are reasonable, and with her whole background of the truth, I suppose, of sacred revelation. Before we finish, Brother Damien, you know, you gave us the overall view, right, of the thing. What would you think now? Irish politicians, we're in a very serious situation here in Ireland at the moment economically, but I would think also even on a broader sense of where we're going as a society. What would you think Irish politicians or Irish society should take from what the Pope said to the British society?
Well, I suppose to take something from what Brother James was saying, faith has to have a role in the public arena. It should be informing the views and the thinking of politicians as well. I think because of what the Pope says there. It's a way of purifying reason. So some very tough decisions need to be made, and I think politicians need all the guidance they can get, and the Church has a lot to offer in that area. It has a lot of wisdom that's accumulated over a long time, so I don't think it should ever be shut out of the public sphere.
Yeah. I mean, that famous or infamous speech, depends what you understand by it, of Mr. Kennedy when he was going for president of the United States, that when he went into the Oval Office, he would be an American and not a Catholic. And really that's I think the Pope is saying that's a false dichotomy and a total false separation. And I think for us Dominicans, in our great belief in reason and the role which reason plays, and faith being rationally understood and come to appreciate it, that we actually could be the ones to help in this whole process, that the faith should not be seen as a danger to democracy, and democracy should not be seen as a danger to the Catholic or the Christian faith. So, brothers, thank you very much, and we'll see you in a few weeks' time, possibly after Christmas. So until then, to all our viewers, happy Christmas, and may the light of Christ shine in your lives this Christmas and throughout the new year.